Shabbat Shalom. It's Shabbat's just closing out here where I am. But I wanted to do this video because this issue is getting pretty heated. It's getting to a point where it needs to be addressed. So that's why I'm doing this video. It's to answer the question, is it really the New Year? Is it really Passover? Is it really the Feast of Unleavened Bread? And how will we know if this is the right month or if it's next month? That's going to be revealed in this video. So first of all, I'm going to start with this email from Devorah's Date Tree, arguing why a patch of Aviv barley is not enough. Dear friends, as we prepare to head out for the barley inspection in just a little over a week, so they haven't even started the barley inspection. I have to note, I need to mention that Rivka Biederman has been following the growth of the wild barley for many months now. She's been following it, to use the term religiously. That's not an understatement. She's been very, I don't want to use the word obsessive, but let's just go with obsessive for now, in a good way. She's been diligent in doing that. We thought this would be a good opportunity to review why a patch is not enough. Number one, it ignores the fact that we are supposed to have Aviv fields by Chag HaMatzot, Feast of Unleavened Bread. And when you look at all these scripture references, that is not true. That doesn't say in the scriptures you need to have fields. It is nowhere. It suggests that Yah wants us to regularly trample through our fields in search of a patch of barley. However, I think that would ruin the crop. I can refute number two, because back in ancient times, they did not use a big, giant combine or industrial machinery. It was done by people with hand sickles, manually. Number three, it advocates ignoring the maturity of the rest of the field. Number four, it advocates ignoring the maturity of other barley fields in the region. Number five, it advocates ignoring the maturity of barley fields in the Jordan Valley / Plains of Jericho, even though we know the fields in this region would be harvest ready by Chag HaMatzot. It advocates ignoring whether we are still in the rainy season, even though harvesting requires leaving the sheaves out to dry and threshing and winnowing outside, which means the barley would become moldy. You don't have to leave it in the rain, you could cover it. Number seven, it advocates that the cutoff date for finding the patch of Aviv barley is 3 days before, arguing that the farmers know their land well enough to be able to predict whether the patch of Aviv barley will appear in time, and that we don't need a single stalk of Aviv barley before bringing the Passover sacrifice. Okay, I'm not sure what they're trying to say in point 7, but I would think a farmer would be able to discern when their barley is Aviv or not. Of course, they would know when, not to predict, but they would know the condition just by inspecting the barley. Number 8, it suggests that everyone can look up in the sky and know if it's Rosh Chodesh, the beginning of the month, new moon, but that only one farmer would know if it's the beginning of the year. Is that really how the biblical calendar works? No, it wouldn't be one farmer, it would be many witnesses. Will you lose some of the crop if you wait to keep the Feast of Unleavened Bread when the fields are Aviv? If you believe we are forbidden to harvest before the Feast of Unleavened, I should say, the day of the wave sheaf, then yes, you will probably lose any stocks that may be Aviv this early. But this is true for any crop, and I'm going to stop here just for a moment. We are forbidden to harvest before that day, because it says in the scriptures, as soon as the sickle is reaping, when you take the sickle to the grain, that's when you start the count. You can't cheat and do it before then. It's clear in scriptures, by the own scriptures that they're using. I believe it's in Exodus. Which verse? believe it's Exodus 9:31, if I'm not mistaken, or Leviticus 23. Let's just look that up, keep this honest. Okay, so it turns out it was neither of those scriptures. It was neither Exodus or Leviticus. It's actually Deuteronomy 16:9. That is the evidence that shows us when we can start to harvest. It says, 7 weeks you shall number to yourself when you have begun to put the sickle to the barley. It's not corn again. Keep repeating that over and over, but it's not corn. You shall begin to number 7 weeks. So when is that? Wave sheaf day, or as I like to call it, the lifting of the sheaf day. So, hope I don't get copyright striked. Let's continue with this email. The farmer who has an apple orchard cannot harvest every apple as it ripens. That's poor logic. The apples that mature very early will fall to the ground and begin to rot before the farmer begins to harvest. When it comes to barley, what I've noticed is that although those early stalks don't make it to the harvest, the other stalks in the patch, which are not as developed, take over, and so you don't actually lose any crop. Well, this kind of negates the purpose of the first fruits, and also defeats the purpose of Jesus Christ, Yeshua, being represented as the first fruits. He is the first fruit of the spiritual harvest of God. He's the firstborn. The other thing is that we don't create theories of what Deuteronomy 16:9 and Leviticus 23:10 mean without taking into account that we should have Aviv fields by the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So again, they're really holding on to this fields doctrine, that it has to be fields. So let's go back to this Torah calendar news from 2021. And there's a section I want to go over here. Let me just pause this to save some time. Okay, so the first argument against that you can't just have patches of Aviv barley is from April 9, 2021. It says, Becca Biederman shows how barley fields in Israel do not ripen uniformly, but in patches. She shows how, in her video, Harvestable Fields Theory Leads to Busted Barley. So I'm just going to open that. I probably won't show the whole thing, but I'll just show you the video there. It's 3 minutes, 58 seconds, so you can watch that on your own time. And she presents why this is so. So I'll just close that for now. It's not loading quickly enough. Okay, let me just pause one more time. Okay, there is an answer to a question as to how does she check the locations for barley. She actually uses 37 locations that she searches out for the annual barley searches. So just to debunk the idea that she has a bias or that she's not searching in enough fields, she is probably the most diligent and thorough in her examinations and her assessments of the barley field, as well as she presents the most evidence in the form of photographic evidence and videographic. And she answers a bunch of questions here about regarding, do we need harvestable fields? So she's saying this is not criterion for establishing harvestable fields, and I agree with that as well. The first fruits offering is to be from the labor of the Israelites that they planted in a field. Did the Israelites plant the barley that was waiting for them the year they entered across the Jordan River? No, these barley fields were the labor and the first fruits of the Canaanites. They were given by the hand of Yah. Furthermore, the book of Ruth shows that the barley harvest took more than 1 day. So it says, she went and came, gleaned in the field after the reapers, and her hap was to light on a part of the field belonging to Boaz, who was of the kindred of Elimelech. So she kept fast by the maidens of Boaz to glean unto the end of barley harvest. So you can see it, she didn't just do it in one day. It was during a period of time, extended period of time, and of wheat harvest, and dwelt with her mother-in-law. This barley was not harvested in a single day. Harvestable fields are a theory, not a fact. Agreed. Are ripened and nearly ripened fields of grains injured by the farmer walking in them? Please take a look at the photos below the posts. The expert farmers speak for themselves. Let's open one here. Is the rest of the field ignored by taking the Aviv Omer area? Not according to the book of Ruth, which proves the harvest does not happen in a day. Okay, we just read that. Consider Leviticus 26:4. If it took 5 months to finish the threshing of the barley and wheat, how many days did it take to cut the harvest? Should the entire land delay the beginning of the year to allow the ingathering of harvestable fields of Aviv barley to be gathered? I mean, use a spiritual analogy and say, okay, will Yeshua wait for the rest of the believers, including all the Gentiles and the fullness of the Gentiles, before coming to the earth and being resurrected? No, obviously there's an order of things, and we have to stick to the order. How many months would they have delayed the start of the year? Okay, does taking the early Omer ignore the maturity of other barley fields? No, this is likely to be believed if someone is looking for enough barley to feed a nation. Can it rain in the first month of the biblical calendar? Yes. And as they that bear the ark were come to Jordan, the feet of the priests were dipped in the brim of the water, for Jordan overflows all his banks all the time of harvest. Interesting, good use of scripture. These are they that went over Jordan the first month, when it had overflown all his banks. The overflowing banks only happen if there is snow melting coming from Hermon and rain, just like the images you see of the wadis around the Dead Sea that flow because of rainfall. And as you've heard me say many times, if it is cold, it's been raining or is going to rain. Okay, another scripture reference. And yea, for the rain that might happen next week. Did a farmer have to decide alone about the readiness of his barley field? No. There were indeed Levites who lived among the Israelites that could be called on to judge. It's a good point. They had the Sanhedrin during Yeshua's time. Deuteronomy 14. The Levite that is within your gates, you shall not forsake him. Is barley needed before Pesach? No. The Israelites did not want to be cut off. Would plan to preserve some of the old grain from the previous year to eat during unleavened bread until wave sheaf day, when the new first fruits offering was waved. Is the first flush of barley considered part of the crop or part of the harvest? Yes. The National Geographic Society defines a crop as a plant or plant product that can be grown and harvested for profit or subsistence. By use, crops fall into 6 categories: food crops, feed crops, fiber crops, oil crops, ornamental crops, industrial crops. Food crops, such as fruit and vegetables, are harvested for human consumption. You lose the first fruits, you lose the early stalks, and vice versa. You lose part of the crop. There's only one first, anything else. Anything else is a second. The Ta'anit records that the earliest ripened fruit on the tree be marked so that it would not be looked over. That's a really good point. Would not be looked over in offering the first fruits from a tree. If the earliest fruit on a tree was guarded so as to be included in the first fruits count, how much more would the earliest Omer of the first flush be guarded against the beginning of the year? And it's so important because it determines the beginning of the year. Harvestable fields of barley is a theory and not a scriptural fact. Well said, well presented. So let's look at some of the pictures here. Yeah, so is this one person destroying the fields by walking in them? No, because this person is not a giant tractor. Yes, if you use modern agricultural methods in the 20th century, you will trample the barley and it will be damaged. But if you're just human beings walking around, you won't be destroying the crops. It doesn't make any sense. So in closing this video, this presentation on determining the new year, I'm not going to be dogmatic about it and say, okay, it is the new year and everyone else is wrong. This is going to be the probably the greatest piece of evidence to determine which is the new year, which is the correct Passover and Feast of Unleavened Bread, and so on. It's this verse, Exodus 9:31. And the flax and the barley were smitten, for the barley was advanced, and the flax was seeding. It was not advanced. So what is the proof of which is the correct timing? It will be determined by the flax. The flax will have the last word on whether this is the correct month or not. And how this is determined is once the crops of flax are inspected, they're assessed to be advanced and no longer seeding. Just using logic and using this scripture for reference, barley is the first crop between barley and flax to become ripe. Flax is afterwards, and wheat as well. Wheat is afterwards. So if the wheat, for instance, the wheat and the rye are overripe, then automatically you know that you're in the wrong month. And the same thing with the flax. So the flax, the wheat, and the rye. So those three could be witnesses in terms of the correct timing for the spring festivals, the Passover and Feast of Unleavened Bread, and even Pentecost, which we'll go into a different video. I plan to present that. How do you know when is the correct wave sheaf day / lifting of the sheaf day, as well as Shavuot, Pentecost. So thank you very much for your time. Please like this video and subscribe to this channel if you have not already. If you have, thank you very much for all your support. Appreciate it very much. Till next time, this is the Septuagint versus the Masoretic, and Maranatha. Thank you very much.